Hi, I'm happy to be hanging out with you today in my craft room to talk about what I've been up to and just relax together. I have 5 whips, 4 works in progress, and a few things off the needles that I've been up to, including a retreat in the Rockies. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first I want to talk about my knitting whips. And my first knitting whip that I want to talk about is my shadow wrap, sorry, my deep shadow heel socks. This is a pattern by Ysolda Teague, and I am knitting this in Freckled Whimsy Serendipity, I believe, which is her 80/20 sock base. So it's 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. The colorway is called Kissing in the Tulips, I believe. And yeah, I'm using the full sock set as intended. So I'm doing contrast in the heel, toes, and cuffs and the main color for the rest of the sock. And I have completed one of the socks already, and I have the second sock on the needles about halfway through the foot part. These socks will be for my mom for an upcoming holiday. I don't know whether it's going to be Mother's Day or Christmas. It depends on how patient I am. This is a multi-gauge pattern where you can use anything from a light fingering up through an Aran weight yarn to knit socks. And like a lot of Ysolda Teague's patterns, in the pattern where you read the stitch counts, instead of just listing the stitch counts out in the paragraph, like a lot of knitting patterns, you actually read the stitch count off of a chart, like off of a table. She has this available as a child size sock and an adult size sock. They're two kind of separate patterns, but I purchased an entire set of patterns from her, the Knitworthy 9 set, and I do intend to knit all of the patterns, I think, out of that set, and I actually have 2 on the needles now. The next whip I want to talk about is my Nebula, which is an Andrea Mowry pattern. This is a pullover top that is meant to be kind of a spring top. It's knit in a fluffy DK weight yarn. I am knitting mine in Diamond Lane Birdie DK in the colorway Waverly. This sweater is meant to be worn with between 10 and 24 inches of positive ease. So it's going to be pretty oversized and a little bit cropped. The pattern comes with options to do either short sleeved or long sleeved. I do plan to do long sleeves on mine, and I'm knitting mine in a size 5, which gives me, with my bust circumference, 14 inches of positive ease. So right in the middle of the ease range. This is knit bottom up in the round with short rows in the back to give you kind of a high-low hemline, and then you go back and forth a little ways to do the armholes. You do the front, the back, both flat, and then you do a 3-needle bind off for the shoulders. Then you sew together the underarms, you do the and then pick up stitches for the sleeves if you're doing the long sleeves. I guess if you're doing the short sleeves as well, there's a little bit of ribbing there. I was worried that this sweater was going to grow on me like alpaca and silk do, but I wasn't sure because it is fluffy and it kind of gets caught on itself. I didn't have to frog very much of this. Actually, I don't think I frogged anything, but I did have to kind of knit backwards a little bit to kind of take out a few stitches. And anytime I had to do that, the yarn did get stuck on itself quite a bit. So I thought maybe, I wasn't sure whether it would grow or not. So I did want to block it as soon as it was off the needles. It is off the needles now because I'm waiting to pick up stitches for the sleeves. But I decided to try it on, and I am pretty pleased with the way it looks on me. I used for the length of the sweater between the underarms and the bottom of the middle of the front, which is the shortest part of the sweater. I used the length of my Moon Crush pullover from the same spots on the sweater. So from the underarm to the bottom of my Moon Crush pullover, I measured it was about 12 inches. And so I made sure that from the underarm to the bottom of this sweater was also 12 inches. Now that it's been blocked, I measured it and it's about 12 inches, maybe a little bit more actually. So I think it did grow a little bit, but not as much as I would have expected out of alpaca silk. So I guess I'm going to share that information with you. If you're knitting something out of a fluffy alpaca silk, maybe don't expect it to grow as much as a regular smooth yarn made out of alpaca and silk. Hi, Editing Angela here. And I think I might want to take back what I said about this being a good length. I actually think it might be a little bit too short, but let me know what you think in the comments. I think I'm going to end up cutting this thing and adding more length. The last knitting whip I'll share with you is with yarn that you'll recognize. This is the Mae Scarf. This is another pattern by Ysolda Teague. This is also from the Knitworthy 9 collection. This is another gaugeless pattern as well, and it works the same way as the Deep Shadow Heel socks do, where there's kind of a table of gauges and sizes. But with this one, it's a scarf, so the gauge is really just for how big you want your scarf. So it's very, very, very simple. I am actually just going to weigh my yarn, and when I get to just under 50%, I'm going to start doing the decreases. The scarf is knit in the round, so it's actually kind of a tube. She has a really genius method of making it fold pretty snugly on itself at the edges that I'm not going to give away here, but it increases just over one side. And I think I'm going to take advantage of the tubular construction by the time I finish it, but I'm going to let that be a surprise. I should be able to share this with you next month. As I said, you may recognize this yarn. This is hand spun yarn from the lady who owned my spinning wheel before me, and this was part of my Fix Frog or Finish February episode last week. I thought maybe I wasn't enjoying the yarn, and maybe the yarn was part of why I wasn't enjoying that project. And I don't like her yarn as much as I like my yarn, even my beginning yarn. But I am enjoying this project much more than I was that rectangular garter scarf that I was working on before. And I'm actually excited to pick this up and work on it. In fact, I've pretty much been working on this every day since I cast it on. My goal for Fix Frog and Finish February was to just get this cast on. And as you see, I have quite a bit of progress on it, and I'm excited to work on it. And as I also said, I planned to kind of do the same sort of stripes. There's two singles of the green in the green sections, and in these sections, one single is green and the other single is this kind of purpley pink color. And I actually really like that kind of subtle contrast. But I'm sure this is not going to be the last Mae scarf I make. I can see this being a really good canvas for a lot of creativity in the future. My other two whips are both spinning whips. So I'll talk about these very briefly because I feel like I've talked about at least this first one quite a bit. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the green Corriedale. So I have made some progress since the last time we spoke. I really wanted for February to be the month that I presented this as a finished object, but I still have not finished. In fact, this is all I have left though, and I think I might try to finish spinning this tonight before I go to bed, so that I can just be done with it. And then hopefully next time I can say that I've plied a little bit of it, because that was my goal for Fix Frog or Finish February, is to finish spinning the singles and ply a sample skein. So I have filled yet another bobbin, and I've started the last bobbin. This, I won't need more than what's on here. This is not yarn. It's almost yarn. The only other spinning whip I want to talk about is this one that I just started. This is Dog. This is Burmese Mountain Dog that was given to me in a big grocery bag by one of my coworkers. He brushed his dogs, gave me their fur. Burmese Mountain Dogs they actually have a pretty long staple length. In fact, let me show you a little bit of this. So the way he gave this to me was just like straight out of his brush, basically. But what I did was I took the fiber and kind of fluffed it a little bit and put it in a lingerie bag, just like the same lingerie bags that I wash wool in. And I put it in very hot water. By the way, this is the staple length. It's about the same as what like um, an Angora bunny would be, which is probably why they call this Chiengora. Chien being the French word for dog. So, and then, Gora for Angora. Uh, so this, I am spinning this just like Angora. I am just holding a bunch of it in my hands. This is called spinning from the cloud, by the way, where you don't really do any processing. I'm just holding it in my hand and spinning with the spindle and letting it catch and then letting the twist pull the fiber out. This is kind of a long draw technique, and a lot of people don't realize you can do this with the suspended spindle. There's a little bit of a trick to it. One of the videos I have planned for March is all about how I do this long draw on a spindle. So stay tuned for that. And if you're not subscribed, maybe do that. The first finished object I will talk about is an obvious one because I've been wearing it the whole video. This is my Orav cardigan by Aleks Byrd. This is a magnum opus type of knit. I took about 9 weeks to knit this, and those 9 weeks were spent knitting at capacity, where I was doing nothing but knit all the time. And basically all of my free time was taken with knitting, and not just knitting, but knitting specifically this cardigan. So this cardigan, let's see, I knit this in 2 fiber, Starlight Sport. This is a 40% Cormo, 40% Blueface Luster, and 20% Mulberry Silk base. And this is their undertone series. They have an overtone series and an undertone series. The undertone series is dyed on gray, and the overtone series is dyed on white. This is dyed on gray. The colorway here is called Candy Apple. This is about a sport weight yarn. The pattern calls for sport weight yarn, but the pattern gauge is, I think, 28 stitches in 4 inches. My gauge was 27 stitches in 4 inches, and I think the row gauge of the pattern was 40 stitches in 4 inches, and mine was 47 stitches. So I did have to go down a needle size to get the stitch gauge, and so my row gauge ended up a lot smaller. So it was quite a bit more knitting, and I actually ended up using more yarn than the pattern called for. So it was good that I had picked up an extra skein. And let's see, this is out. Okay, so this pattern is by Aleks Byrd, and it's in her book Kindred Knits, which I now have signed because she was at the retreat I was just at, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the video. So this pattern is knit bottom up in the round. Every single row of this sweater has cable crosses, and I think I counted, before you do the decreases for the V-neck, there were between 36 and 40 cable crosses in every round, which is why you knit this in the round and then steek it. So you knit it in the round, and you steek for the armholes, and you steek for the cardigan opening. Pick up stitches for the sleeves, pick up stitches for the neckband and button band and all of that. I would consider this a fairly advanced pattern, both because of all of the cables. I think the cable chart was a 22 row cable chart, and the cabling is not hard though. It was all 1x1 crosses, so nothing was overly complicated as far as like the stitches go. It's just keeping track of that big of a chart can be challenging. And I think the other piece of it that makes it challenging for especially a new knitter is the steek. The steek was a little bit different than the steeks I've been used to, because instead of having, like, usually when you're steeking a sweater, or in the past when I've steeked anything, it's always been color work. And so I've been able to kind of color code where I cut. And in this pattern, where you cut is a purl bump. because it's all one color, there's no color work to say like, okay, cut the white stitch. It was cut the purl. And when you're reinforcing around a purl, it's different than a lot of the tutorials online will show you. And I didn't find a tutorial for how to do it. So I ended up, I won't say guessing, but I ended up kind of inventing my own way, which it ended up working, but it was a very tight way to cut around the steek. I used a matching red wool thread to do my reinforcement, and it's really not very noticeable inside. There were even a few places where I cut through the steek, but I also have steeked a few things in the past, and I'm experienced enough at steeking that I'm not super worried if I cut through my reinforcement, because having knit this whole thing, there was a place where I had purled something that should have been knit and ended up having to drop down like 20 rows or something to go fix that whole column. And when I went to do that, unzipping it actually was difficult. I had to actually take another knitting needle and pull the stitches out. They didn't drop on their own. And so I was very confident when I went to steek that this yarn was sticky enough, despite having 20% silk. This was sticky enough that it did not want to unravel. That, and I also picked up the button band or picked up the sleeves. I picked up the stitches that needed to be picked up around the steek before I steeked, which also adds a reinforcement. So the reinforcement I crocheted in there, I really considered as kind of an extra insurance policy more than a necessity. So when I cut through those stitches, I wasn't super upset about it, other than like having that loose thread hanging out there. When it gives the instructions for the button band, it says make buttonholes. You have to kind of pick your favorite method of doing buttonholes. And I ended up doing the 1-row buttonhole, which I'd never done before, because this is my first time knitting a ribbed button band as well. So I had to I looked on YouTube at different ways of doing buttonholes, and I picked my favorite, what I thought looked the best, and it was the 1-row buttonhole. It seemed like it was the least stretchy, and that I liked the way the edges of it looked. That said, there's a few things I would change about this sweater, and I won't say would, but because I will change them about the sweater, because I'm really proud of the way this has turned out, and I want to make it perfect. So this isn't me being displeased with the way the sweater turned out. I know a lot of people have said, like, looked at this and said, I can't see the things that you see. But I think that because this is one of the nicest sweaters I've ever made, I would like to enter it into fiber arts competitions. If I'm going to do that, I do want it to be as perfect as I can make it. So several things that I would do to this sweater to make it better have nothing to do with Aleks's choices of designing, and everything to do with my choices as I was knitting it. So the number one thing I would do is I want to frog half of the button band. So the button band is knit kind of all the way around, come back, all the way around, come back. There's 10 rows in the button band, and I would undo 5 of them, which gets me back to the buttonholes, and I would place the buttonholes differently. So right now there is a buttonhole above where I have buttons, and the reason there's a buttonhole this far up is that I did not keep very good track of where I started decreasing for the V-neck, and I wish I had put a stitch marker there to denote, hey, I just started the decreases, because it wasn't very obvious to me when I had the sweater kind of laid out in front of me and not on my body. But then when I put it on and buttoned it up, I did feel like this the button was too far up the button band, and I ended up just ripping that button off. There were 8 buttons, and I ripped the top one off. So now it has 7 buttons, which I actually don't mind having 7 buttons on it, but there is a buttonhole that is still here. So I would just make the buttonholes a little closer together and stop a little higher, or sorry, stop a little lower down, where the actual decreases started, on the buttonholes, so that it's a little bit better suited. And then the other thing is really just about the inside of the sweater. I would finish the steeks a little bit better. When I first started picking up stitches, not when I was picking up the stitches, when I was sewing in my ends, I decided to sew in my end to sew down the steek, but then when I ran out of yarn, I stopped sewing down the steek. I didn't get more yarn to finish sewing down the steek. So I think I would just sew the steeks down a little bit nicer. And I think once I redo the button band, I'll also sew down the steeks in the front of the sweater. And I'd like to weave an ankle band to put to sew in to kind of cover up those steek stitches with an ankle band as well. Maybe add a little bit of reinforcement to the button band to keep it from ever sagging or anything, although I don't think it will because this yarn's pretty bouncy. But you know, those are the only things I would change about this. I think, like, at first I thought the sleeve length was maybe a little bit long, but I think it's perfect. I think the size I chose is perfect. I think, yeah, I'm just very, very pleased with this sweater. I'm really happy with my yarn choice. To me, like, I just feel like I hit a home run with this. And I'm really excited to knit some more patterns from Aleks and use some of the techniques that she taught us as well. My next category of finished objects are spins. So this yarn, oh, actually, this yarn is is spun from a bat, a little 50-gram mini bat from Kiera Wiggins. And the bat was called Rainbow Taupe. It was 50% blue face luster, 40% wool, which I guess is 40% other types of wool, and 10% viscose. And I believe the 10% viscose is probably these little rainbow neps. I thought that the rainbow neps would give this more texture, but it gives a little slight texture, but mostly it just gives color here. But I'm really pleased with the way that this turned out. I spun this on my Chickadee Turkish spindle from Ed Jenkins. And I spun this mostly on my trip to and from Canmore, Alberta, 2 weeks ago. And I applied it on my Swan, which is also a Jenkins Turkish spindle. Yeah. And I spun this, I guess I applied this as a traditional 3-ply as well. So I did have, because it was a traditional 3-ply, I did have leftover singles. And what I decided to do with my leftover singles was make a very textured yarn, because this wasn't as textured as I expected. So I wanted to make a textured yarn. And what I did was I took those leftover singles. What I did was I took those leftover singles and I took some mohair locks that I had in my stash that I've never used before because that fiber was just too precious and I didn't know what to do with it, both things being true. And what I did was, as I was plying the singles together, I kind of wove the mohair locks in between the plies and then twisted the plies together. So although it like looks wild and the locks are hanging out everywhere, they're actually fairly secure in there because they're kind of woven in and plied in. But I really love kind of this wild looking yarn, and I actually plan to the dog fiber sticking to this. I do plan to knit these together in something. I just really love these two together. I think that they'll complement each other really well because they have got kind of the same fiber base. So I need to count my yardage and then see what kind of project I can put this in. So a really, really fun yarn. I'm very proud of it. The next finished object is almost not a finished object. It's not really usable. They're just little swatches that I knit. I told you I really like knitting swatches, but I'm going to call them finished objects. I'm not planning on making anything from this at all. So it's this, which is this is yarn that okay, let me back up. So the next 3 finished objects all came out of my very favorite birthday gifts. One was a birthday gift from me to me, and the other was a birthday gift from my boyfriend. My birthday was last Friday, and on last Tuesday, I happened to wake up in the morning and look at my phone, and I decided to go look at Spanish Peacock and see if they had put any new spindles up. Spanish Peacock is a master woodworker in Maryland in the United States, and he's a very, 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 very popular spindle maker. I think he's known best for his supported spindles, and it is very difficult to get a hold of one of his spindles unless you go to a fiber festival where he is vending, because when they put spindles up on their website, they sell out pretty much instantly. So when I went on their website on Tuesday morning, a few days before my birthday, I saw that they were not sold out and they had several posted. And so I scrolled, and they have a limit of one per customer, and they do have special updates where if you've never bought a supported spindle from them before, you can win a chance to kind of have first dibs on a spindle. And so I already knew that I wasn't going to buy a spindle unless it was a really good fit for me. So I went in and I said, okay, if they've got a ninja, I'm buying a ninja. And there was a ninja. There's a ninja in this ninja spindle. And this is in curly black mango wood for the whirl. The shaft is Dymalex, which I think is some kind of composite wood that's kind of composited to be very, very strong. So if you drop it on the floor, it doesn't immediately break, because sometimes, although you don't want to drop a supported spindle, sometimes it just happens. I'm just going to get my little spindle bowl out here and show you. Like, this thing spins really fast and it spins forever. And I like a really fast spindle, even more than a spindle that spins forever, but very fast spindle is kind of right up my alley. I like a lot of twists in my yarns, and it takes a lot of twist to get a tight twist in your yarn. I should say it takes a fast spindle to do that, or either that or you have to restart the spindle over and over again to get enough twist. So I was really excited because this came a little bit after my birthday, and so this was one of my birthday gifts. And the other thing, this is a segue into some finished objects, I promise. The other spindle that came was this one, which is a bob spindle. And this is also from Spanish Peacock, and this is in Cocobolo wood. It's got the same shaft, but the whirl on this one is Cocobolo, and it's a little bit heavier. And but they're very similar in that they're both designed to spin kind of forever. This one's not quite as fast as the Ninja, but it's still pretty fast. I'd say that I like them pretty much equally. I think there's a little bit of a subtle difference between the two, but not a ton. And I like both of them. And I'm very happy to have both of them. But this one came from my boyfriend. I was really excited when I ordered my Ninja, and I went in to the kitchen to tell him while he was getting his breakfast ready. And he was like, hey, your birthday's coming up and you didn't tell me that you wanted this. And I was like, yeah, but I've been looking for one of these for 2 years and I've never been able to catch an update. So it seems silly to tell anyone else, like, hey, buy me a Spanish Peacock spindle, because I didn't want to sign people up for frustration. And, but apparently after I told him that, he went into the other room and went on their website to see if they still had any left, and they had a bob left, which was, he didn't even know the bob was like the other one I would have bought if they didn't have a Ninja. That I was kind of equally interested in those two. And so basically my first and second choice spindles I both own, and I'm really excited about that because I love collecting spindles from different makers, and Spanish Peacock is a spindle maker I've really wanted to try for a long time, and I've never been able to get my hands on one of his supported spindles. I do have one of his drop spindles, a Top World drop spindle from him, and I do really like it as a Top World drop spindle, but I really wanted his supported spindles, and now I've got two. And anyway, this is a segue into some finished objects. So anytime you buy a spindle from pretty much any spindle maker, they always come with like a little bit of fiber. It's like enough to spin for maybe 20 minutes. 20 minutes of spin time. So it's just get to know the spindle and get a chance to try different fiber, I guess. But all of the Spanish Peacock spindles come with a sample of fiber from Fossil Fibers. It comes in these adorable little envelopes that say, "Is that new fiber tools we spy? How exciting! May we join you for a spin?" I love these little envelopes, and has a picture of a sheep on the other side. So my Ninja came with an 80/20 Rambouillet silk blend in kind of this color. And I spun it a very, very thin single because, like I said, the Ninja's a very, very fast spindle. And I spun a very, very fine single, and then I applied it on itself. And I just used a top roll drop spindle for this. I applied it on this drop spindle, and because I needed a heavy drop spindle to do what I wanted to do, which was put a bunch of extra ply twist in so that I could then ply that plied yarn back on itself again. So I made a cabled yarn, and so it's hard to tell from here, but it's a really round yarn. It gives lots of stitch definition. It's very, very, very stretchy, and not just because this is garter stitch, but yeah, it's a very bouncy yarn, both because it's Rambouillet and silk, and because, well, it's not so much the silk, but the Rambouillet, and because of the structure of the yarn. So very, very cute little yarn. And I really enjoyed knitting with this too, which was really what I wanted to know, is, do I enjoy knitting with the cabled yarn? And I did. So, and then the bob came first because Ryan wanted his spindle to come before my spindle. So he paid for the express shipping, and it came, I think, on Valentine's Day. And I honestly could not have been more surprised with any gift from anybody. And it came with this yarn. No, it came with this fiber, which is a Portugal grown fine wool. That's what it says, and it's kind of a brown to green or green to brown. I don't even remember what direction. I don't remember what direction I spun it, but I do know that the direction I knit it was from the brown to the green, because my cast on was really messy. But yeah, I knit this little swatch, and this, I think, I don't even remember. This is just a 2-ply. No, it's a chain ply. This is a chain plied yarn. So I chain ply. Of course, I chain plied this. So I chain plied this to keep the colors together, because it's just a very subtle gradient between brown and green, and I don't know if it even picks up on the camera. But and then the last kind of spinning finished object is this black yarn. Now this came with a spindle that I bought in Canmore, a little glass whirl supported spindle, and the shaft of this is a knitting needle. It's a double pointed knitting needle. And then there's kind of a blown glass. I'm going to say that this is maybe scrap glass. This is from Northern Crow Creations. And like I said, I really like collecting spindles from a bunch of different spindle makers. This is by far not my favorite spindle, but it does spin. It makes yarn. What is on this spindle right now is yarn that I spun off of that spindle. And plied on that on the stone whirl spindle. I decided to stop spinning on that and start spinning that fiber on one of my Spanish peacock spindles instead, just because I wanted to spend a little bit more time with my Spanish peacock spindle, because I really liked working with the cable plied yarn that I made that teeny tiny sample of. I just decided to take the sample that came in the spindle kit, the black yarn, or the black fiber that came in that spindle kit, and make a cable plied yarn with that. I don't know if this was Corriedale or Merino. I think it might be Corriedale, because it seemed like kind of a long staple length to be Merino. I ended up having to spin it over the fold, because I feel like Merino I've been able to spin without going over the fold, but I had to put this over the fold because it was a little difficult to draft with the super fast spindle from comb top. So I folded it over itself to make it a little bit easier, a little bit faux short staple length. And yeah, I like the way that this turned out too. It's not as stretchy as I would have expected, which is another reason I don't think this was merino. And this has already been washed. I tied it up and washed it and dried it already. But I will knit this up and see how it goes. I might just knit this into a swatch. I'm still kind of exploring different yarn structures and how they behave. So this will be good for that study. My third category of finished objects is the garment repairs that I did as part of my Fix, Frog, or Finish February. So I've already done both of the garment repairs I had planned, plus one bonus repair. So the first repair I want to talk about is my Taylor Swift Eras Tour sweatshirt that had the torn cuffs, the very worn cuffs. And I did this is the let's see. Yeah, this was the more damaged cuff of the two. And I don't know that you can really even tell that it was more damaged at this point, but I basically for most of the tears, I just did a blanket stitch around around the cuff, and then there were some worn areas on the inside and outside of the cuff that were just they were worn but not at the edge, and I just did some basket weave over them. Yeah. And then the left cuff, I started out doing a basket weave kind of over the edge of the cuff and a little bit here too. And I think I did a little bit here, and then I did a blanket stitch, and then I started doing the blanket stitch around. But I learned a little bit from this. Number one, I think I actually like the look of the blanket stitch here better than, or sorry, I think I like the woven look better than the blanket stitch. Oh, I meant to mention, I use sashiko thread for this. I've never used sashiko thread for anything, but when I was going to my local sewing shop, Modern Domestic in Northeast Portland, they had it, and they had a lot of different kinds. So I bought variegated, so it would be more interesting to look at the repairs since I was doing a whole bunch of visible repairs. I bought this specifically for this Taylor Swift shirt, and I bought this specifically for the jeans that I was going to repair. So yeah, now my Taylor Swift sweatshirt is hole free. I will say that the blanket stitch did kind of make a little bit of a lettuce hem on the cuffs, which I'm not a big fan of, which is why I'm kind of like, oh, maybe in the future I would probably just do this basket weave. But I would do this maybe on a woven fabric that doesn't stretch out. So I think I might have been stretching this out too much when I was doing the blanket stitch, which is probably why it ends up lettucey. But I only ever wear this sweatshirt around the house, so it's not a big deal. And this is going to keep it from unraveling and being damaged any further. So I've extended the life of my favorite home time sweatshirt. My other repair I was going to do is this pair of jeans, and the plan changed. So while I was at the sewing shop, I was going to buy kind of a matching fabric they sell like all these fat quarters for quilting. Modern Domestic is primarily a quilting sewing store, and I was going to buy some quilting fabric to sew into the crotch to kind of patch them. My plan was to kind of baste the patching fabric to the inside of the jeans with some basting adhesive, which I don't have. So I was going to buy that at Modern Domestic, and then I was going to use this sashiko thread to reinforce over that and make it kind of last forever. And but then while I was looking for the basting adhesive, I saw that they had denim patches kind of pre-cut with adhesive on them, like iron-on adhesive on them. And so I decided to buy those instead. And then I ironed them to the inside of my jeans, which maybe I'll show you the inside first. So I ironed them to the inside of my jeans. And this is what it looks like from the outside. And I ended up not reinforcing them with the sashiko thread. I actually kind of wanted to reinforce it again after this, not just for the reinforcement, but for the decoration. I understand that one might not want to decorate one's crotch, but I kind of like the idea of showing off that I'm repairing my clothes, because I think it's something that's so rare that for people to do. So, but yeah, this iron-on patch it makes the fabric a little bit more stiff, and it was really hard to get through even with a sashiko needle, the sashiko needles are very sharp. And I had a very difficult time getting through that adhesive patch layer. So I decided not to just sashiko over it. And so this repair took me in total probably 20 minutes to do. This was a very fast repair. It was 20 minutes and it was $4.50 for 2 patches. and it was money and time very well spent, because now I have a pair of like $50-$60 jeans that I don't have to repair or don't have to replace. And I also have a bonus repair, because I think the day before I was going to the store to buy all of the materials to repair the two things I talked about in my Fix Frogger Finish February video, I noticed that there was a hole in the armpit of my Sacred Sheep shirt. And don't mind this shirt, because I actually didn't even wash it after. And it has like grease stains or something on the front of it. But this is my Sacred Sheep sweatshirt t-shirt. This is my Sacred Sheep t-shirt, and this is the hole, or former hole, in the armpit. I don't know that I did the right kind of repair here, to be honest. I can put kind of the process I used on the screen. I turned it inside out to do the repair, and I think that was kind of mistake number one. I think this would have been a good choice had I put a patch in it, but because I was trying to kind of make my own woven fabric with this kind of darning technique, I think it kind of it just doesn't look right. So I think I may end up cutting this out and putting a patch of some kind of fabric inside and then sewing over that instead of this. But I think this will do, at least for now, at least keep it from getting much worse in the meantime. So this t-shirt just got a little bit of an upgrade to being a little bit more handmade. Lest you think all I ever do is knit and spin, I should tell you that I also went to a knitting retreat 2 weeks ago. I was at Canmore, Alberta for a Fibre Folk retreat, Winter in the Rockies, with Knit Social and the Grocery Girls and Aleks Byrd. So there were 2 workshops that we participated in. The first one was called Embellish Your Knits, going from drab to fab. And we learned to embellish our knits. We learned, they taught us duplicate stitch, which I've already done quite a bit of before, but I've never tried to do it in a pattern. So I made a little duplicate stitched part on my swatch, and then I beaded around it with some beads. And this is kind of afterthought beading rather than kind of doing it in the knit itself. I'm very proud of my little swatch and how sparkly I made it with the beads, and how very pink and purple it is, which is not really like me, but it made me happy. I'm not wearing this. I could just use the colors that I liked to look at, and it didn't have to be something that would look good on me. The other class was Aleks Byrd, and this was a technique I'd never used before. It was rosimine, which is Estonian inlay knitting. And what we made in this class is a little swatch in the round with this pattern that she designed for the class. And we did Estonian inlay, and I'm currently using it as a cozy for my chiclets, or my chicles, my chicle collection. And yeah, I really liked this technique. I'm excited to show you some of the things I have planned using this technique, because it uses such a small amount of yarn, and you actually need a thickness of yarn that is thicker than your background yarn. So it makes it a perfect technique for hand spun. And I'm really excited to show you what I'm going to do with it. One of my biggest highlights of the trip was the people, as always. Got to see, because I went to the same retreat last year, I got to see a lot of the same people that I was friends with last year. And one of those being my roommate Holly, my friend Becky from A Good Enough Girl. I'll link her channel down below. She was there, and she talked about this retreat on her channel in her latest video. So if you want to hear more about it, I think she probably is going to do a better job, or did a better job than I'm about to do, talking about the retreat. But we went to the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel for high tea, and we had some beautiful tea time desserts and tea, and we took some pictures out on their back patio, both kind of a group picture, and we took pictures with Aleks and with the grocery girls, and it was just it was a really good way to kind of start the retreat. And then on the second day of the retreat, my group had classes all day. We started with Aleks and then ended with the grocery girls. And we had dinners every night. We had competitions. Um, we played bingo. We had a knitting trivia game. We had raffles. The grocery girls gave away a lot of their finished knits that they weren't using anymore. Unfortunately, I am not a size where I could take any of those things, but I know Becky took home a couple of really nice sweaters, and it was very generous of them to share with us. And lots and lots and lots of yarn. There was a marketplace, but in line with one of my goals to kind of appreciate what I already have, I'm not going to talk so much about all of my acquisitions on this channel. I'm not gonna promise that I'll never talk about acquisitions, but it just doesn't seem like something I feel like talking about right now. And I do have projects planned for most of the things I bought. I don't have projects planned for all of the yarn I got for free, but I do have plans for all of the yarn I bought, and you'll see it when I start those projects. And I do kind of want to incentivize myself to start those projects and work on them in order to be able to show you. So I am going to hold back on that for now and go forth with the rest of the things. The one competition that my table won was the speed knitting relay, and by one I should probably say we won, because we actually came in third place, but the first two tables to finish had already won prizes, so we won. By default, I guess. No, we won. There were other tables that were on our heels. So I'll insert a little video here of Fiona winding the yarn. She was such a fast ball winder. Apparently, she winds a lot of her own yarn balls at home rather than using a regular ball winder. And Holly did the cast on and bind off and a little bit of the stockinette, and I did all of the ribbing. And I think Amanda did some stockinette and Becky did some stockinette as well. And then, of course, yeah, Fiona did the ball winding. And I think her name was Susan that was holding the yarn open. And it was just it was really exhilarating and maybe a little bit nerve-wracking, but very fun to kind of participate in that team activity of the speed knitting relay. And yeah, on Saturday, my roommate Holly and I went up to Banff National Park to Lake Louise and saw Lake Louise. I don't neither one of us had ever been up there before. It was quite a warm weekend. Lake Louise was really the only place we saw snow. It was just in Banff National Park. And the only time we wore our coats the whole weekend was also at Lake Louise. At Lake Louise, I think it was a little bit below freezing, but everywhere else it was like in the 30s and 40s Fahrenheit. It's quite different from last year. Last year, I think I got a little bit of, I won't say frostbite, but I was very close to getting frostbite, I think, on my thighs. I took about a 15-minute walk outside of our hotel, and I came back not being able to feel my legs. So this year it was very, very different from last year. I am already planning on going back next year. My friends Julie, Holly, and Becky and I are all planning a knit along. That's all for this podcast episode, but in the next month, I have several episodes planned around spinning on spindles, including the beginning of my series, Will It Spindle, where I try spinning different types of yarn just on spindles. And as far as knitting content goes, I also have an episode planned looking back on some of the garment patterns that did not work out for me so that we can kind of learn together what we can do differently to avoid those problems in the future. If those plans for the next month sound good to you, or if you just enjoyed yourself on this episode, like this episode and subscribe so you can see my future content. Have a good one. Bye.